You know that feeling when you finally hit a big financial milestone and you just stare at your bank account thinking, holy crap, I actually did it? That's what $100,000 feels like. It's surreal in a way that's hard to explain until you experience it yourself. But here's the thing that nobody really prepares you for. Once you hit that number, there's this massive temptation to either do absolutely nothing with the money out of fear of losing it, or to immediately blow it on something stupid because you feel like you've earned some kind of reward. Both approaches are equally terrible and will completely derail your financial progress. The first approach keeps you stuck in scarcity thinking even though you now actually have genuine wealth. The second approach destroys the entire foundation you spent years building in just a few months of bad spending decisions. Because honestly, most people have absolutely no idea what to do next. Having $100,000 is completely different from having $50,000, and not just numerically. Something fundamental shifts in your psychology when you hit that number. The way you think about risk, opportunity, and your own financial future completely changes in ways that are genuinely hard to articulate until you actually experience it yourself. If you've hit this milestone and you're wondering what comes next, or if you're actively working toward $100,000 and you want to know exactly what to do when you get there, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button because the next 15 minutes could literally change your financial trajectory for the next decade or more. So let's get into it. The first thing you absolutely must do once you have $100,000 is separate it immediately from your regular spending money. This might sound obvious, but you'd be shocked how many people hit this milestone and then just leave it sitting in their regular checking account, which is basically the financial equivalent of leaving your car running with the doors unlocked in a sketchy neighborhood. Your brain is going to be constantly aware that the money is there. And slowly, subconsciously, you're going to rationalize spending it on things that aren't actually emergencies. Oh, I need a new laptop. That's kind of an emergency, right? My computer's a little slow. Or wow, I deserve a nice vacation after all this hard work. That's definitely an emergency of self-care. I've earned this. Before you know it, you've blown $15,000 on stuff that felt justified in the moment, but didn't actually move your life forward. You're just back where you started, except now you're beating yourself up for wasting years of effort. Instead, here's what you do. Open a separate high-yield savings account at a different bank if possible. I'm serious about this. Make it just annoying enough to access that you won't impulsively transfer money out at midnight when you're browsing and you see that perfect thing. Put this $100,000 in that account and tell yourself it's untouchable for the next 12 months minimum. You're going to make decisions about this money, but you're going to make them with a clear head and a solid plan, not in the heat of the moment when you're scrolling online or feeling emotionally triggered. The psychological separation is actually more valuable than the physical separation. Once this money is mentally classified as something completely different from your spending money, your relationship with it fundamentally changes. You stop seeing it as discretionary funds and start viewing it as a wealth-building tool. It becomes sacred, not in a weird, obsessive way, but sacred in the sense that it has a purpose, and you protect that purpose fiercely. The second thing you must do, and honestly this should probably come first, is immediately calculate your actual burn rate and determine exactly how many months of living expenses this $100,000 actually represents in your specific situation. Because $100,000 sounds impressive until you realize that if your monthly expenses are $6,000, you only have about 16 months of runway. That changes everything about how you should be thinking about this money. Some people might hear that and think, Shao, that's basically just a year and a half of expenses. That's not that much money. I thought I was rich, but that's actually a huge amount of financial breathing room that most people never get to experience in their entire lives. Think about that for a second. 16 months where you could theoretically not earn a penny and still cover all your expenses. With that kind of runway saved, you can suddenly make decisions from a place of strength instead of desperation. You can actually leave a toxic job instead of staying because you desperately need the paycheck. You can take a sabbatical to recharge mentally and figure out your next move. You can weather a serious health crisis or unexpected job loss without your entire world falling apart. You can turn to a bad opportunity without panicking about how you'll pay rent next month. Once you know exactly how many months of expenses you have saved, write that number down and put it somewhere you look regularly. This is your freedom number. This is the amount of time you can survive if everything goes wrong. This is your insurance policy against life's chaos. Knowing this number is incredibly liberating because it fundamentally shifts you from scarcity thinking to abundance thinking. You stop making every single financial decision from a place of fear and anxiety. You start making decisions from a place of strategy and long-term thinking. Your burn rate tells you exactly how much financial runway you have, and that runway is literally your biggest asset right now aside from the money itself. Guard it fiercely because it represents freedom in a way most people don't understand until they experience it. The third thing you absolutely must do is stop treating this money like a rainy day fund and start treating it like a foundation for building real wealth. This is where most people really mess up. They hit $100,000, feel proud for about a week, then get scared about the stock market or economic uncertainty, and just leave the money in a regular savings account earning basically 0% interest while inflation slowly eats away at the purchasing power. It's like planting a seed and then never watering it. Worse, it's like actively preventing the seed from growing. Your $100,000 is going to be worth less and less every single year if you just let it sit there doing nothing, earning a pathetic return that doesn't even match inflation. You need to put this money to work, but I'm not talking about anything scary or overly aggressive. For most people in your situation, the right move is to invest this money in low-cost index funds that track the overall stock market. I know that probably makes some of you nervous. The stock market can go down, prices fluctuate. What if I lose money? I hear that fear all the time, and I get it. But here's the reality check you need to hear. If you're not investing this $100,000, inflation is absolutely guaranteed to erode its value. That's not a maybe. That's mathematical certainty. But if you invested in diversified index funds, historical data shows that over any 10-year period, you're far more likely to come out significantly ahead than you are to lose money. We're not talking about picking individual stocks or day trading or anything crazy that keeps you up at night. We're just talking about putting money into a simple, diversified fund that matches the overall market performance. Something like a total stock market index fund. Even with very conservative assumptions about returns, like 6 or 7% annually, this money can realistically grow to over $200,000 in 10 years if you let compound interest do its thing. That's doubling your money without doing anything except letting time work in your favor. And if you get closer to historical stock market averages of 9 or 10% annually, you're looking at $240,000 to $260,000 in a decade. That's fundamentally different from the pathetic returns you get from a savings account that's barely keeping pace with inflation. But all of this only works if you actually put the money to work instead of letting it rot in a savings account earning 0.01% interest. The fourth thing you must do is ruthlessly audit every subscription, recurring payment, and automatic expense in your life and eliminate anything that isn't absolutely essential to your actual happiness or survival. Because now that you have $100,000, you have visibility into something most people never get to have. You can actually afford to take a step back and ask yourself whether you're spending money in ways that genuinely align with your actual values and long-term goals. A lot of people with substantial savings still have these little money leaks that drain hundreds of dollars per month without them even consciously thinking about it. Subscriptions they forgot they had, memberships they haven't used in months, insurance plans with coverage they don't actually need, recurring charges they just accept as the cost of doing business without questioning them. But once you have real money saved, you start realizing something crucial. Every single dollar flowing out of your account is a dollar that's not working for you in your investment account. That $15 a month subscription you forgot about, over 30 years with compound growth, that's literally $5,400 you could have had compounding and growing in your investment account. The premium on your insurance, that's $50 higher than you could get elsewhere. That's thousands of dollars over your lifetime that you're just throwing away. I'm not saying you need to become some extreme penny pincher who eliminates all joy from life and never enjoys anything, but I am saying that now that you have real money, it's absolutely worth spending an hour or two going through your bank statements and credit card bills to eliminate anything that's not genuinely serving you. You'll probably find somewhere between $200 to $500 in monthly charges you completely forgot about or never questioned. That's $2,400 to $6,000 per year you can redirect toward your actual wealth-building goals instead of padding some corporation's subscription revenue. That adds up fast. The fifth thing you must do is completely separate your $100,000 from your emergency fund strategy. This is absolutely critical, and most people seriously mess this up. A lot of people make the significant mistake of lumping everything together into one big pile and thinking, great, I have a year or more of expenses saved, so I'm all set financially. But that's really sloppy financial thinking that will completely undermine your wealth building over time. Your emergency fund should be small, accessible, boring, and sitting in a liquid savings account that you barely think about or touch. We're talking specifically 3 to 6 months of expenses in a separate account that's designated just for true emergencies like job loss, major medical bills, car breakdowns, things like that. But your $100,000 is something completely different and should be treated differently. This is your wealth building foundation. This is your future and your retirement. It's to be invested in the markets. It's going to grow over decades through compound interest. It's going to be the primary basis for everything else you build financially. If you mix these two things together in one account, you'll absolutely end up in a situation where you dip into your investment account for emergencies too frequently. Your car breaks down unexpectedly, and you transfer $5,000 out of your investment account. Your friend needs money, and you pull it from the investment account. A medical expense pops up, and you raid your portfolio. Before you know it, you've sold investments at the worst possible times and completely undermined the entire wealth-building process you've worked so hard to establish. Keep your boring emergency fund small and completely separate in its own account. Let your $100,000 do its job as a wealth-building tool without interfering with it for every little crisis that comes up in life. The psychological separation is just as important as the actual physical separation between accounts. When you have a true emergency fund that's actually enough for real emergencies, you're dramatically less tempted to raid your investment account when something unexpected happens. You can let your investments compound undisturbed and do what they're supposed to do over long periods of time. The sixth thing you must do is resist the absolute urge to immediately increase your lifestyle spending just because you have more money now. This is probably the most important behavioral thing on this entire list, because it's where most people completely derail their entire financial progress. They save diligently for years. They hit $100,000. They feel like they've finally made it, and immediately they start increasing their spending. The nicer apartment, the fancy car, the expensive gym membership, the high-end restaurants multiple times a week, all the stuff they were denying themselves while they were saving now suddenly feels justified and earned. They tell themselves they deserve it. And look, I'm not saying you should never upgrade your lifestyle. That would be miserable and unsustainable. But there's a massive difference between a thoughtful, intentional upgrade that genuinely aligns with your values and impulsive lifestyle inflation that happens just because you suddenly have money available. Here's the framework to use. If you want to increase your spending on something, ask yourself this one question. Does this actually make my life materially better, or does it just make me feel momentarily good? A nicer apartment with natural light and more space that you actually enjoy? That might genuinely improve your quality of life? A car that's reliable and efficient instead of falling apart constantly? That's a reasonable upgrade. But a luxury car that costs more, depreciates faster, and costs more to maintain? That's lifestyle inflation wearing a fancy costume. The real danger with lifestyle inflation is that it's completely invisible. You don't feel like you're doing anything wrong. You feel like you're enjoying the fruits of your labor. But what's actually happening is you're handcuffing your future self to a higher expense level that you now have to maintain forever. Once you start earning more and spending it on lifestyle, it's psychologically extremely hard to go back to a lower spending level. Your lifestyle becomes your new baseline, and you need to protect that baseline like it's sacred, because exceeding it becomes nearly impossible without guilt. The seventh thing you absolutely must do is make a real written plan for reaching the next $100,000. Seriously, write it down. Because once you hit one major goal, the goal after that starts to feel much less impossible and daunting. You've already proven to yourself that you can do it. If you got to $100,000, you can definitely get to $200,000. It just takes time and consistent effort and staying focused. But here's where most people really get lost after hitting this milestone. They reach $100,000 and they don't have any clarity on what comes next. They're not sure if they should be aggressive or conservative with their next investments. They don't know if they should keep investing the same monthly amount or if they should try to increase it. They're just kind of floating around, making random decisions as situations come up. Instead, what you really need to do is sit down with a notebook or spreadsheet and actually write out what $200,000 looks like for you in your specific situation. How long will it realistically take to get there based on your current savings rate? What needs to happen with your income or expenses for it to happen faster than expected? Do you need to start a side business? Do you need to push for a promotion at work? Do you need to cut expenses further? What's the actual math and timeline? Once you have actual numbers written down on paper and a real plan for execution, hitting that next milestone becomes almost automatic. You're not hoping things will work out. You're not winging it and making things up. You're executing a predetermined strategy. And I can tell you from years of experience, execution always beats hope every single time. Hope doesn't build wealth. Discipline and systems build wealth. The eighth thing you must do is seriously consider starting a side business or alternative income stream if you don't already have one actively generating revenue for you. Because here's the reality of wealth building that most people genuinely don't want to hear. If you're earning money from just one source, you're always at the mercy of that one source. You're completely dependent on keeping that one employer happy. You're vulnerable to market downturns, industry changes, and downsizing. You're stuck in a situation where your entire financial future depends on factors outside your control. But if you've got multiple income streams, even relatively small ones, you suddenly have real optionality and leverage that completely transforms how you think about money and risk in your future. A side business doesn't have to be complicated or all-consuming or require you to work 80 hours a week on top of your regular job. It could be something as simple as consulting in your field of expertise, freelancing skills you already have and know well, creating digital products that generate passive income, writing, coaching, teaching online, tutoring. There are literally endless possibilities if you think creatively. The point isn't necessarily to make a huge amount of money immediately from day one. The point is to prove to yourself that you can generate income outside of your main job. That psychological shift is actually huge and more valuable than the money itself because it proves that your financial security doesn't depend entirely on your employer staying happy with you or the company not downsizing or the economy tanking. You become less desperate in salary negotiations because you genuinely know you have other options. You're more willing to take calculated risks and opportunities because you're not betting your entire livelihood on one outcome. And if something changes with your job situation, you've got other revenue sources to fall back on and maintain some income. For most people with $100,000 saved, starting a side income stream is legitimately the difference between eventually becoming truly wealthy and staying comfortably in the middle class forever. It's the multiplier effect that accelerates everything because it lets you invest more money consistently. The ninth thing you absolutely must do is get serious about tax optimization for your investments. This is genuinely one of the most underrated aspects of wealth building that most people completely ignore or dismiss as boring. Most people don't even think about taxes until tax season rolls around in April, and by then it's way too late to do anything strategic about it. But if you've got $100,000 to invest, you should absolutely be thinking strategically about where to put it from a tax perspective first before you even buy the first investment. If you haven't maxed out your Roth IRA contributions, that should probably be your first move with any new money because Roth accounts grow completely tax-free for your entire life. That means the gains, the dividends, everything is completely yours to keep with zero taxes owed. Then there's your employer 401k or retirement plan if you haven't maxed that out yet. Then there's a regular taxable brokerage account if you've hit the contribution limits on the other tax-advantaged accounts. Each of these has completely different tax implications and long-term consequences for your wealth. Roth accounts are generally best for money you don't need to access for many years because the growth is tax-free forever. Taxable accounts give you more flexibility and liquidity, but you'll owe taxes on capital gains when you eventually sell investments at a profit. The strategy you choose matters tremendously because taxes can literally cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime if you're not intentional about how you structure your accounts and investments. I'm not saying you need to become a tax expert or hire a fancy accountant for everything, but I am saying you should absolutely spend a few hours understanding the basic mechanics of how different account types work from a tax perspective. That foundational knowledge will be worth many thousands of dollars to you over the next decade or two of investing and building wealth. The 10th and final thing you absolutely must do is stop thinking about this $100,000 as the finish line and start thinking about it as a waypoint on a much longer journey toward genuine financial freedom and security. Because here's what most people genuinely don't realize until they're already past this point and looking back. Getting to your first $100,000 is legitimately difficult and requires real discipline, sacrifice, and years of consistent effort and good financial decisions. You had to say no to things you wanted. You had to delay gratification for years. You had to work and earn and save consistently month after month. But once you've actually got that $100,000 in place, getting to $200,000 is actually much easier. Getting to $500,000 is easier still. And getting to 1 million becomes almost automatic if you just stay consistent and let compound interest do its work for you. The reason this acceleration happens is compound interest working in tandem with compound income. Your money starts making money on top of itself. Your side income generates more income. Your confidence increases, so you negotiate better salary deals. You get better opportunities and take better risks because you're not desperate. You make smarter financial decisions because you're not operating from a place of constant fear. Everything starts compounding at accelerating rates that seem almost miraculous. Most people see their $100,000 and they immediately think about it as the end of a long, difficult journey. They want to take a break from being disciplined. They want to celebrate and relax. But the reality is you're honestly just getting started on the real wealth-building journey. The next decade of your financial life is literally going to determine whether you retire comfortably and relaxed at 55 or whether you're working until you're 70 because you didn't make the right decisions now. Whether you have genuine security and peace of mind for your family or you're constantly one crisis away from financial disaster, whether you have real options and freedom in life or you're stuck in situations you hate because you desperately need the money. All of that is determined by what you do with your $100,000 right now and in the coming years. This milestone isn't a finish line where you can coast and relax. It's a launch pad for everything that comes next in your financial life.